Have you ever felt confused about how astrology and manifestation can both be true at the same time? Most manifestation teachings suggest that we have unlimited power and can basically manifest whatever we want. But astrology seems to say that there is at least some kind of structure or fate, that our birth chart and our transits shape who we are and what's possible for us. This contradiction used to really bother me. I felt like I had to choose. Either I had total freedom or I was stuck with a script that I didn't write. So in this video, I want to share with you how I finally discovered that I could reconcile astrology and manifestation, fate and free will, and use them together to create a life that I love. So manifestation has always resonated really deeply for me, but for a long time I had really mixed feelings about astrology because it seemed to clash in my mind with the idea that we are the total creators of our reality. So here are the few of the things that I really loved about astrology. First of all, I found it very validating. I had felt strong resonance with my astrology birth chart. I studied that in depth as well as those of my family and friends. I also would listen to tons of astrology forecast videos on YouTube, and a lot of times most of what they said was really validating as far as what my intuition was telling me too. And so it felt like it was very helpful in that regard. I even started doing my own forecast videos for a while, my own astrology forecast videos on this channel too. That just kind of goes to show how much astrology forecasting was valuable for me. The way that astrology started to play into my life and my work was that I started using astrology as a way to help with my client work too, incorporating astrology insights into my client sessions. On the other hand, astrology also had a bit of a dark side for me. It was pretty accurate in not only describing some of my strengths and the things that I really loved about myself, but also some of my biggest challenges and pain points. And sometimes in reading about these parts of myself with such accuracy, some of the astrology that I read left me with kind of a sense of despair, like maybe I'm fated to always struggle with these types of challenges. And while astrology forecasting was something I really enjoyed and appreciated, it was also something that would sometimes cause me feelings of anxiety. For example, when astrologers would say, this isn't a good time to launch something new in your business, or this is a time when you'll likely experience challenges in relationships or with health or something like that. That left me with kind of this foreboding sense or sense of anxiety that just really wasn't helpful. So as a result of this, when I found that astrology would start to kind of put me into this mindset of kind of fatedness or a little bit too fatalistic kind of mindset, I found that I would have to step away and take a break from it for sometimes a long period of time to kind of get back in touch with more of my manifesting mindset and more of my sense of empowerment as the creator of my reality. And so for many years, I would kind of go through like these breakups with astrology where I would be very passionate about it, very into it for a time, and then would have to step away from it and get some space. And when I found that it was kind of causing anxiety or leading me to too much kind of down this mindset of not being as much the creator of my reality. So yeah, for a while I did kind of this back and forth dance until I had a few really important insights that helped me to finally see how astrology and manifesting could really fit together and how elements of fatedness and elements of free will could go together. One of the first key insights that I had about astrology is that every astrologer's personal philosophy of life really shapes their interpretation. The overall view of life that an astrologer has when they're telling you about yourself via your birth chart or talking about the transits that are happening in astrology really matters because it really colors how they interpret what is happening. For example, one astrologer I used to follow would describe astrological transits as like lessons that we're here to learn. She saw life as being kind of like a classroom where the ultimate goal was to evolve ourselves enough so that we didn't need to keep reincarnating here on Earth. Eventually, I had to just quit listening to this particular astrologer because I realized that my own philosophy of life was so different that there was just that continual clashing. I personally feel more resonant with the idea that we're not here to learn lessons and evolve ourselves. We're more here to joyfully experience ourselves. I mean, if you think about it, if we are God in human form, then why would we need to improve ourselves? We'd already be these wonderful, perfect, divine beings. And so that idea that life is more like a playground for creative expression resonated more with me than this classroom or like learning lessons type of an idea. But I just want to share that as one example of how the life philosophy really flavors how an astrologer would interpret the transits and what's happening in someone's birth chart, because it's important to keep that in mind when you're listening to an astrologer to be able to feel if that overall life perspective resonates with you, if it feels good to you, if your intuition is saying yes to it and agreeing with it, or if on the other hand it makes you feel tense or uncomfortable, or it's causing this discord internally for you. And then kind of piggybacking about what I was just saying on intuition, the next insight that I had is that astrology is really kind of like a tool to help us tune into and better work with our intuition. Astrology really helps us translate what our intuition already knows. Astrology is really broad. The symbols that are used within astrology can have lots of different layered meanings. And so there's really a lot of flexibility and room for interpretation in what astrology is presenting. And as I said earlier, an astrologer's beliefs and overall life philosophy can really influence how they interpret the astrology, the things that astrology is indicating. I don't remember who said this, but one of the things that I heard about astrology that really resonated with me was that the best astrologers are psychic, are really tuned in to their intuition because of the broadness of astrology as kind of like a language that you can use to describe what's happening. Somebody who's very intuitive, or us, if we're listening and we're really connected to our intuition, it helps us to laser in on, out of all the possibilities of interpretation, what is most relevant for us and what is the most accurate for us personally. Because yeah, that's really what's going to give us the best experience with astrology, I believe, is when it marries itself with intuition, when it's kind of a tool for intuition to speak to us. And that's what I think was the essence of what I really loved about astrology. What I've always really loved about it is those times when I'll read something about my birth chart in a book, or I'll hear an astrology forecast on YouTube or something, and whatever is conveyed like really strikes an emotional chord with me. And that's my intuition, that's my inner being agreeing with it and saying, yeah, that's another way of me, that's a way of me being able to tell you what something that I wanted to express to you, or something about yourself, or something about what's going on in your life. And so those kind of really validating, intuitively experiences with astrology, I think, are kind of the best way to work with it, is like when you are reading a book about astrology or listening to a forecast or hearing anybody talk about yourself or your life using astrology, is to keep a close listen at the same time to your own feelings, to your own intuition. And for anything that feels off or that doesn't resonate, you just let that go. You listen to that intuitive emotional guidance and let that be the way that you tell how accurate something is for you right now. And then the third insight that I had about astrology is that astrology describes our path to joy. As I mentioned before, philosophy plays a big role in how we interpret astrology, and for a long time my biggest challenge was this: how do I reconcile my belief in conscious creation with the seemingly fixed nature of astrology? And so here's the working theory that I've come to. Astrology doesn't describe our fate. It points us to how we can grow into our fullest potential for joy. And I'm actually starting to rethink the word fate altogether. So, of course, some elements of our life are really fated, you could say. Like, for example, I was born at a specific place on the planet at a specific time. I have a certain hair color, eye color. I have certain natural likes and dislikes. And so you could definitely say that those elements are fated. And so I kind of started thinking about this new metaphor when it comes to astrology and the elements of fatedness. I started thinking about plants, about the natural world. You know, there's things that are fated in the natural world too. Like, for example, if you plant a seed for a cherry tree, it's going to become a cherry tree, not an avocado tree. And so perhaps astrology is kind of like if you are planting seeds in a garden and you've got this seed packet that describes onto it like what things the plant needs in order to really thrive in the garden, like how much light it needs, how much water, the kind of soil conditions, things like that. And so maybe our astrology chart is in a similar way, just something that describes what we really need in order to grow and thrive and kind of reach our ultimate potential for joy in our life. Maybe that is what it's trying to describe as well. And so really thinking about it in that way helped me to kind of keep that understanding in mind when I'm listening to astrology forecasts or reading things about my chart, is that astrology, it should be something that's pointing me towards my most joyful kind of self-expression, and kind of keeping that as the main intention helps me to keep a more healthy relationship with it and keep from getting into the negative mindset of fatedness of like, these are the challenges that I'm always going to be stuck with, or I need to follow what the astrologer is saying that I should do instead of like what my heart is really saying that I want to do in a certain period of time. And so, yeah, I hope that if perhaps you are someone that's also been wondering or even felt a little anxious as I used to do about how do you balance astrology, elements of fatedness with manifestation and elements of conscious creation together, then hopefully some of these insights have been as useful for you as they have been for me. One thing I'd love to know is if you resonate with my philosophy that we're here for joyful self-expression. I'd love to know if you have ever found things in your astrology birth chart, if you've studied it, that really helped you express yourself more fully, or that really resonated deeply with you in that way. Definitely comment down below if you have any examples of that, or if you have any questions about the video, the topics that we covered, if there's anything you're still curious about that I didn't cover that you'd be interested to chat about. I'd love to hear from you. And also, if you would like more manifesting tips and tricks and inspiration from me, then as always, I have a free guide linked down below. It's called The 7 Habits of Highly Magical People, and you can get a free copy below this video using the link in the description box. So thank you again for joining me today. If you liked this video, I think you'll also enjoy this next video, which is all about how to set new moon intentions. So bringing together again the elements of manifesting and astrology. Definitely check that out if you're interested. And thanks again for joining me. Until next time, happy manifesting.